Away Games Podcast is on the air. I'm Adam Amawala, joined by pinch hitter Ken Schultz, wearing the gray t-shirt, glasses with purple rims, brought to you in part by Benjamin Moore, the official paint provider of not this podcast. But how's it going, Ken?
Doing well, Patrick. Good to be here. And if you're going to bring me in that way, all I can do is respond, purple rims, purple rims.
I mean, that's worth buying those glasses just for that.
Oh, yeah. Hell yeah. Some could say maybe I set this up all along a year and a half ago, just waiting for the opportunity.
It could be. But hello, everyone. Welcome to Away Games. You can find us at Away Games Pod on the social media things. We're not on Threads. I don't think we'll be on Threads, but you never know. Who can say? But we're joined by Ken Schultz filling in for Kevin today. Ken likes to think of himself as the Tommy LaStella. I think you could do better. I think we love TLS here, but I think you're an elite level. Who's the best pinch hitter of all time?
I mean, Manny Mota comes to mind.
Manny Mota,
the airplane line.
Mm-hmm.
So you could go with that.
Lenny Harris,
with the Cubs. Lenny Harris, is always a good choice. Sure, yeah, those are the two that pop into my head right now. Dave Hansen, I remember being very good back in the day. I don't know why
sounds right.
I'm going, back into the 20th century for all of these, but those are the ones that
probably because you've been playing too much Immaculate Grid. That could be why.
Yes. And when there was a day where I missed one, like I just quit out of the whole thing entirely. I'm so mad. So
I know I'm sure you're much better at it than I am. I missed one today, and I'm still upset about it. But enough about Immaculate Grid. Let's talk about the Chicago Cubs, who
immaculate team.
I don't know how immaculate they are, but they've certainly been playing better of late. We are recording this on Wednesday before the second game of the short two-game set against the crosstown Chicago White Sox. We're following a very enjoyable game last night that saw Dansby Swanson hit a couple home runs, saw Nico go deep, a bunch of stolen bases, and that was following a 3 out of 4 set against the Cardinals. How are you feeling? How's your morale at this moment?
I mean, it's certainly nicer to watch game by game at this point. I'm still trying to keep a pretty realistic view of things. That I think a lot of people kind of assume that the National League Central, because the word Central is in the title, is utter dog shit the way the AL Central is. But if you look at the standings, I mean, there's no great team, but Milwaukee is 10 over 500. Cincinnati is 9 over. And in the same week, the Cubs have won 6 out of 7. The Reds have also won 6 out of 7. So they've gained nothing out of that. So it's certainly encouraging to see like them playing their best baseball and getting healthy. I think is honestly the most important part about all that. We can dive deep into kind of what that means too as we go along with this. But there's still a long way to go. And honestly, the wild card might be a better route to maybe a shot at postseason contention.
I keep going back and forth on that. I mean, basically the Cubs are 6 games out in the division, but they have 2 teams to pass. And then they are, I believe, 5 games out in the wild card, but there are a lot more teams involved. So, I still personally feel like winning the division is the most realistic route, and certainly the route that you want in terms of actually having a shot to compete in or win a postseason series. But I think mainly my feeling is like I'm just happy that the Cubs didn't completely limp their way into an inevitable sell-off, and they're at least forcing a situation where presumably, and look, I can say this, and the Cubs might lose to the White Sox and then get swept in 4 games by the Cardinals because we've seen that stuff before. But like, if the Cubs continue to play pretty well and they are at or above 500 come trade deadline, at the very least, it makes Jed Hoyer's job very difficult, and that's something that I'm sure you will enjoy quite a bit.
Holy shit, am I in favor of that? Yeah. The only thing I'm more in favor of than Jed Hoyer's job being difficult is Jed Hoyer's job being non-existent.
Sure. Yeah. Well, the job could still exist. He just wouldn't be doing it.
Yes, that's fine too. However you want to get it done.
Made redundant, as they say in England.
Yes. In the very British way. Yes. I'm sorry, You've become redundant, Jed. You are like the weather here, bringing us down every single day.
Goodness gracious. Well, we've already checked off the if you had Ken Schultz does a British accent on your away games bingo card, I have to tell you, you're in pretty good shape at this moment.
I'm trying to decide if Jed is the Gareth of the British Office or the Ricky Gervais of the British Office. I'm not sure which one. I think
It's
Gareth
hard to
is the most
say.
loathsome, who was the
Yeah.
inspiration of Dwight on the American one. So I'm probably going to go with like loathsome Toady. So we'll stick with that.
Loathsome Tony, Loathsome Tony. I like that. I like that a lot. Does not make me think of Anthony Rizzo. Makes me think of the
No,
opposite of Anthony Rizzo.
no, decided.
Um, but yeah, I mean, what do you? So we're the Cubs are 49 and 50, 49 and 51 right now. And I tweeted this last night in an effort to be kind of more optimistic. It feels like this team has been incredibly streaky this year, and I think that is because they mostly have been. But you look at that stretch where they got hot, and then kind of starting with the second game in London where they got really cold again, and now they've played better since then. But taking that stretch as a whole, the Cubs have since about early to mid June, so I'd say 6 weeks, they have been playing like 600 winning percentage baseball, which over the course of a season would certainly be good enough for the playoffs. I would say definitely division. What is your feeling on, gosh, whether like if you can remove the emotional part of it, like is this team good enough to warrant adding onto?
So I mean, I saw you post that record last night on the Away Games Twitter feed, and yeah, I was surprised and impressed that it's been that good for that long.
Yeah.
I would say, looking at this roster, would you say that this is a 600 winning percentage roster overall? Like, just if you were to glance at it in a vacuum?
I guess not, but I think that like when Bellinger is as hot as he's been, and
Sure.
when and also keep in mind that stretch that we're talking about includes Swanson missing
Mhm.
whatever is 10 games, 12 games. I continue to feel like this is a team that was constructed in such a way that if everything broke right, they were going to win 85 to 90 games. But if that didn't happen, which never does, they just weren't. So, do I think they're a couple pieces away from being a World Series contender? I absolutely don't. But do I think they're a couple pieces away from making the playoffs potentially? I do actually think that's possible.
Sure. I think that the fact that they are, I mean, in my world, decidedly not a 600 winning percentage roster, even with the way that they played over the past month and a half, kind
Yeah.
of gives me caution that there might be a downturn coming, and it might be sooner than we'd all hope, just because that's kind
Yeah.
of the nature of the way the season's played out, as you referenced. As I said before, I do think that health is a major factor in terms of how good they are day to day. That we see when Swanson and Bellinger are back off the IL, that how much more effective they are, especially against dregs like the Nationals or the White Sox.
Hmm.
But we also have seen that when one player goes down, and it doesn't even have to be Bellinger, it could be anybody, like Nico when he went down for a few days. Like this
Right.
roster thins out immediately in a snap, and you suddenly
Yeah.
have Miles Mastroboni playing every day, and he still is, by the
Hmm.
way. It's a bit concerning.
He's actually been he has been better. We do have to at
Sure.
least say that he has been closer to like what you would hope a last guy on a roster in the major leagues would be, which is getting some hits sometimes, playing pretty good defense, and like being flexible.
He is over the past week been far and away, as far as I know, the best week of his major league life. And hey, good on you, Miles. That's great.
Yeah.
It's obviously better than not. You are very close to earning my nickname of Aaron Miles Masterboni.
What is that?
Do you remember Aaron Miles? I was assuming that that was going to cause a bit of
No.
trauma. Oh God,
Aaron
block it out. Yeah.
Miles. Is that
Baseball
like a
reference,
relief
Aaron
pitcher?
Miles from like 2009. He was
Okay.
their extra infielder who gave them nothing at all. Like I'm gonna guess his WAR
Yeah.
was, I don't know, -9. Just a conservative estimate, but
Yikes. Well,
yeah.
the good news is with the Aaron Mileses of the world, at least they're contributing something by being a name to plug into, as we mentioned before,
Yes,
Immaculate Grid. I mean, I'm sure you're
yes, it is.
getting some 0.0001% of people said Aaron Miles for something.
I think Miles Mastroboni's nickname in about 6 months is going to be Rarity Score.
I think so too. I think so too. It could be the new, like how football has Mr. Irrelevant for the person drafted last. I think, yeah, rarity score could be like an insult within Major League Baseball. Yeah. So the point being, Having been to those three Yankees games when Swanson wasn't playing, amazingly the Cubs won 2 out of 3 of them. But like you're looking at the bottom half of the lineup, especially when like Barnhart is starting, saying like
Mm.
how
Yeah.
can the bottom of this lineup ever get a hit? And even to that end, like I know you are fairly vehemently anti Yan Gomes, mostly just because of what he represents for the Cubs and for the organization. But like if Yan Gomes gets hurt, or somehow if they decide to trade him, like that is a big loss. You can't just plug in. I guess you could put Amaya in there, but the point is, it's a very thin team in a lot of ways.
Well,
Um, eh, yeah.
that sums up this roster construction right there. As you said, if Yan Gomes is hurt or is traded away, that's a big loss. And
Mhm.
I can't think of a bigger insult to Jed Hoyer than that. So well done, Adam.
Well, you know, I think you and I maybe are differ in certain ways in terms of like our feelings throughout the year. I have found myself to be at least recently like pretty engaged in this team, and still of a mindset where I'm like excited to watch them, excited for the game to come on, excited to, you know, if I'm out and about, like excited to watch when I get home. I feel like you are kind of like well, I guess I'll ask, like where are you at with this team right now?
I'm trying. That's kind of the best that I can give you. Is that day to day? Yeah, I'm still for the most part tuning in, and this past week is making it obviously easier to tune in game to game, expecting that it's at least going to be watchable and probably
Mm-hmm.
be fun at some point. But like, and this obviously is probably my own neurosis kind of coming to the fore like that, but it's in so many games, still, even 2 years down the road, that it feels like that there's a giant mental block in the middle of my head as I try to watch and get on board with the Cubs in an emotional way, that I have to kind of work around my utter contempt for the man who put this team together, and what them possibly doing well or them being traded all at the deadline says about
Mm-hmm.
him. Um, and it's hard. It really is. Not gonna lie. And I don't know that I'm gonna get the full Cubs experience back until he's completely gone.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I do have moments where I'm able to kind of put a lot of those intrusive thoughts in the background and just be in the moment and be present and celebrate. But game to game, it's a chore. I'm not gonna lie. And it's like in like the pre 2021 world, and I speak of like the trade deadline of 2021 like it's pre-COVID times, so in the same
Yeah.
kind of terms.
Yeah.
But emotionally, like that's where I am. Where in that world, like say Nico Horner's grand slam against the Nationals over the last week, that would have been
Mm-hmm.
a huge pop. Like even alone in my apartment, I'd have been on my feet cheering and screaming my head off. But because Nico's awesome and he's
Mm-hmm.
hot, and uh, he's great, a joy to watch every day. Um, and when it happened, when he hit it, it was like my response was, "Oh, Nico," and that's it. So that kind of sums up like even at the most joyous parts for the most part when I'm watching him, it does get like an in the moment response. Like last night again when Suzuki made the leaping catch at the wall, it was a wow, Seiya, but that's it. That's
Mm-hmm.
all I'm able to give for the most part, and that sucks. I don't like it either, but I can't, as I think I said the last time I guessed it here, I can't feel feelings that aren't there, and
Yeah.
that's all the fault of one man.
Well, I guess that makes things kind of complicated, right? Because in some ways, at least for you personally, maybe it would be easier if the Cubs lost the next 5 games, and then, you know, Jed sells off again, and people start to feel the way we all have felt about Jed. I sense that in a scenario where somehow Jed pulled off some trades for the Cubs, and acquired some talent, and maybe the Cubs, you know, win the division or get in and get a wild card spot, and then make a run, and people have good feelings about him again, that it would be hard for you to enjoy that in a pure way, because you'd be like, no, 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 now people are backtracking and like thinking this guy knows what he's doing again.
Yeah, 100%. It's like, and again, that's me. And I don't want to be that guy who's rooting for losses just to get somebody fired. I think the closest I've been in the past to that was like in the middle of 2011 when Hendry was at his net ear and he chased Sandberg away to the Phillies, and I was just mad and upset every day. And it's kind of a similar vibe to that for, I mean, different reasons. Hendry was proud of his incompetence. Jed, for all of his faults, is not incompetent. I will give him that. But it's, and I don't want to be that guy for other fans either.
Mhm.
Like, this is again my own personal neurosis that I just kind of have to work through myself. I guess I just wish I didn't have to work through that necessarily so much, if that makes sense. It felt like too that we were really, really close to a lot more people kind of getting it and getting on board, and especially when they lost the first game of that Nats series, where it just felt like after that they were, taken to the woodshed by the Red Sox 2 out of 3, and it was pretty apparent at that time, like, oh God, this is about to break bad, and they're about to sell again. And I think one more giant fire sale at the deadline would have really moved a lot of people into my camp, and I would have been welcoming. Hey, yes, there's plenty of room under the fire Jed sell the team umbrella.
Yeah.
But I mean, good on all the players for rallying at that point and for playing at their best, and obviously getting healthy, as we said, has been a big part of it. Cody Bellinger has been a joy. Like,
Incredible. Yeah.
that even with my complicated feelings, what a fun player he is. And it's fascinating too. And I'm going to digress into this just because our friend Sarah Sanchez wrote a really interesting article at Cubby Blue this week, kind of diving into some of the deeper numbers of Bellinger, which you would think, given the fact that he's been playing at, player of the month level over the past month in July, that he'd be like, all of his underlying peripherals would be indicating like this is the best season of his career since he won it in 2019. And not the case at all. Like, he's doing this with, and I'm going to call it up here in just a second. Sarah's written, barrel percentage is half of what it was in 2019. Hard hit percentage from 2019 at 45% down to 31% this year. Like, his underlying numbers are all like, oh, how is this happening? And yet he's showing up every day.
Well, but I think that's also like the strikeouts are down a lot.
That's huge. And that's the big thing.
And his 2-strike hitting is up.
Yes. Yeah. And you see too, and it was, there was a moment in the Saturday game against the Cardinals, and it was a beautiful moment, I think in the 4th or 5th inning, where they had overshifted him as much as you can with the shift rules, with the shortstop playing pretty much over the second base bag. Yeah. And he just reached out, poked a 2-strike pitch into that hole at shortstop, and it was like a pure Luis Arraez, Rod Carew hit. And
yeah, it was a Rizzo choking up with 2 strikes hit.
Yeah, and I was enthusiastic as hell when I saw that. Yeah. Like, because that's, in my world, one of the most exciting plays in baseball, which tells you kind of the weird fan I am sometimes. But like, I love that. I think that's great to see.
Yeah, absolutely.
So there's a lot to get behind here, even with my weird neurosis and complicated feelings toward him.
So let's kind of play it out here. Right now, we've been reading a lot of stuff here. Obviously, like, we're gonna know. Well, we'll know everything a week from now. A week from now, the trade deadline will have come and gone, and who the hell knows where we'll be at that time. But there's even been some speculation about, like, well, maybe the Cubs wouldn't trade Bellinger, but they would trade Stroman because, at least if you can't re-sign Bellinger, you get a compensatory pick, Rule 5 draft pick, and you wouldn't with Stroman. Which, Ken is making the classic jerk off hand signal, which the listeners need to understand. We both feel that way. I think it's a completely ridiculous viewpoint. I'm of the mindset that, like, don't do half measures. Like, if you're gonna blow it up, blow the whole thing up, get everything that you can, and try to get somebody who's going to be ready to be in the big leagues before 2031. But if you're gonna buy, like, don't. I think being in the middle is the worst place to be, and the Cubs have been kind of in the middle for a few years now.
It just takes some time. Little girl, you're in the middle of the ride. Yeah. Okay. Don't know why that had to be thrown out there, but it did. Anyway,
it had to.
So we are 2/3 of the way through the season, pretty much at this point. So we've seen 4 months of Cubs baseball. You should know what team you have at this point. And if you need 1 week or 1.5 weeks even of good, solid baseball against the Cardinals, the Nationals, and the White Sox to determine whether or not you're going to buy or sell, your plan sucks. Sorry. Like, that should be either, you can pick either direction, and that's fine. Just, you should know what kind of team you have right now, and playing well against the dregs really shouldn't affect it either way. It feels a little bit like Jed Hoyer almost has a gun to the season's head right now, doesn't it? And he's telling the team, so you don't want this to go off, just keep winning. Which, I mean, okay, that's one way of motivating, I suppose. It also seems like not the most enjoyable of ways to take in a baseball season, but like, I mean, we hear so many rumors right now about that weird trade Stroman, keep
Right.
Bellinger thing that came out in Rosenthal last night. I saw John Palmarosi today leaking that the Marlins were in Bellinger, but now the Cubs have higher playoff winning odds than the Marlins do,
Right.
so maybe not. And it's just like, you know, like you've had time to figure out what's going on here. And if you're going to half-ass it, like if you half-ass it, especially like that, how on earth do you think you're going to keep this locker room anywhere close to motivated if you trade Stroman?
Yeah, I saw
After
somebody
we
make a
saw
really
what
good
happened to
point.
Brewers last year.
Yeah, exactly. And that's exactly what I was going to say is it might have even been you. Somebody I saw on Twitter making a good point about like yeah, when the Brewers traded Hader last year, it had more to do with his pitching. Like he
Mm-hmm.
was somebody who was considered a leader in that clubhouse. Devin Williams was specifically like very upset about it. We've also seen the Brewers like really mishandle the situation with Corbin Burns before this season. But here's the thing, and maybe you disagree with this. I don't think Jed is like the Joker and he just like wants to watch this team burn. I think he genuinely has wanted to be in a position to buy. Now, being in a position that you have to trade people because none of them are extended, that is an error for sure. But my feeling is, after the Cubs pitched the combined no hitter in 2021, like I don't think there's any part of Jed Hoyer sitting there in June seeing the Cubs in first place that was thinking to himself like I'm going to trade off everybody that everyone loves. Like I don't think that was part of the master plan. It just kind of broke that way, and then he was ruthless enough to say whatever, I'm pulling the band-aid off and I'm doing this. My point is I don't think he wants to sell. I'm sure the last thing he wants is to be in a position where he's like damned if he does and damned if he doesn't, which is kind of what this is trending towards. And just to put the focus back on the players, like they do seem to be in a position where it's like coming into this stretch against the Cardinals, White Sox, and Cardinals again, a 10-game stretch, they had to go at least probably 8-2. I still think that's like ultimately what they'll need to do to prove that they deserve to add. That's a ton of pressure, and the players are not stupid. They're aware of it too. Whether or not it's been like explicitly said anywhere, who knows? But like, I guarantee you, in that locker room, they are aware of what's at stake here, and they can't afford to lose 2 or 3 in a row. Like they can't do it. So, um, all that to say, like, if you're gonna play it out, right? If you're gonna be optimistic and you're gonna say the Cubs are gonna win the next 5 games, they're gonna buy. What would you add if you were Jed Hoyer, Carter Hawkins, whoever's involved in those decisions?
Um, I certainly would add a bat, like, and I would try to find power anywhere I could get it. It's great that Bellinger has been providing it. That is coincided with them playing so well. I think is having a
Mhm.
legit power bat in the middle of the lineup finally, and obviously last night's game against the White Sox was incredible with all that power and speed. Which to be the best in the National League, I've heard you got to have both, so that's helpful. And having that come up at the same time is great. But
Yeah,
they definitely, I mean, at some point, Bellinger is not going to be hitting 455 over the next two
no,
months, I'm going to guess. So you're
correct.
going to have someone be able to step up and fill that power void when he does have a little bit of a slump. So
Right.
that I think would be first in my mind. I would also want another starting pitcher would be good. That it feels like they've got a big three now with Stroman, Steele, and Hendricks. Uh, Jameson Tyone has pitched well in. They kept trying to say the past 3 games last night. I'm not so sure that game against the Nats counts as pitching well.
Yeah.
That was fine. So yeah, he's pitching better than he's been, better than a
Hmm.
600 ERA. That's great. So is a pencil in the eye to keep with our Joker metaphor going. Uh, and it certainly feels like either the league has figured out Drew Smiley or something's just gone completely off the rails there because his curveball is getting nobody out now. And that's a problem because he throws nothing but curveballs. So if you're going up against, I mean, teams that I assume are also going to be adding in Milwaukee and in Cincinnati, you're going to want more than 3 starters that you can count on, I think. So those would be the 2 places I'd go right away.
Yeah, I'm trying to be optimistic about Tyone, mostly because his first half was worse than he's ever been in his entire career. And you figure in the same way that Smiley being as good as he wasn't going to last, and it clearly hasn't. Tyone being as bad as he wasn't going to last. And yeah, I mean, if I recall correctly, I believe in that Washington game, did he give up like 4 runs and went
He
5
gave
or
up.
6.
It was either 3 or 4, and it was all early too. So people,
Right.
so
And then
he
he at
set up
least hung in there and
right.
yeah.
Yeah, I
So
mean,
right. And frankly, anything even close to a quality start would be a step up. Like even 6 runs or 3 runs over 6 innings you're going to take from Tyone given
celebrate.
how rough he's been.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would tend to agree. I think if there's anyone who's available who can become your full-time third baseman, obviously that would be, I would say, the number one position of need. So you add some sort of bat at third base, or one of both of those things. Probably another relief arm. I don't know who's out there in terms of like a lefty relief arm, but it
Be good
continues
too.
to be a little troubling that like
Mm-hmm.
Anthony Kay is the only person that this team has. Not that
The
he's
thing,
been bad, he's been okay, but like losing Brandon Hughes was a big deal for this team. Um, and yeah, I think adding another starter, and it could even be like a reclamation sort of thing. Like there's been a lot of speculation today. Lance Lynn is slated to start tonight, and apparently the Rays are looking into him. The Dodgers are looking into him. I certainly haven't heard anything about the Cubs looking into him, but we know that the Cubs and White Sox have traded before in the past, and as recently as a couple of years ago. So yeah, I don't. I mean, am I sitting here saying the Cubs are going to trade for Shohei Ohtani? No, I don't. First of all, I don't think he'll be traded anyway. But um, I guess the idea would be if this team has been a 600 team for the past month and a half, 2 months, can adding a bit make them a 650 team or a 700 team, or can it at least keep them at roughly the clip that they're at if they've been overperforming? I think that's really the kind of the fundamental question here.
yeah. Well, based on track record, if they're going to trade for Lance Lynn, do you think Pete Crow Armstrong and Ben Brown would be a solid deal? Because that seems to be how things work out.
Hey, well, that's a fun one for us, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. I think you could I mean, the way the trade deadline works is that yes, sometimes you bring in guys that cause the team to go on a spurt for a month and a half or 2 months of incredible baseball.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's certainly within the realm of possibility, especially with the way the schedule is going to shake out over the last 2 months of the season. That there's going to be
Right.
like a solid 2 weeks in the middle of August where I think they play like the Royals, Tigers, and Pirates in succession.
Oh my.
And yeah, that's a lot of oh my. So
Yeah.
that is a George Takei oh my almost. So like yeah, if you can spark yourself into that, like that would be a really real good opportunity of playing that kind of 650 stretch over an extended period of time, I'd say. So it's within the realm of conceivability. It's also within the realm of possibility that the Brewers or the Reds acquire somebody that sparks them to go on another run.
Sure.
Because I mean, they're flawed teams, but there's also a lot in either roster that would give you an instance to think, oh my goodness, that there's like almost enough here that just the right addition, that would be enough to take the division at this point.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I think the Reds are kind of having their 2015 Cubs season where they're maybe a year ahead of where people thought they would be. Now, if we're gonna let ourselves be optimistic, I guess let's play the other hand as well. If the Cubs sell, who do they sell? I think the assumption is certainly Stroman and Bellinger. I think there's a chance Yan Gomes could be on the block. I mean, he's I like Yan Gomes. I know you don't.
Good time, Adam Amawala.
I know.
Yan Gomes is a usurper and he sucks.
Yeah. Well, who else goes? Would you say?
I just from a personal paranoia standpoint, I'd be worried Kyle Hendricks would be on the block with his option next year.
Yeah.
I don't think they'd get a ton for him, but I don't know if that would stop Jed, just because it seems like when he's got the momentum to do evil shit, then he rides it like nobody that I've ever experienced before in that chair. It's things that petered out, but anyway,
it rides it like something.
Like the 2022 and 2021 Cubs. Yes.
Yeah. Don't forget 2019.
Yes. Yeah. And yeah. Anyway, so yeah, I think
I could see like Merriweather being kind of like an under the radar guy that a team would want. I could see possibly Mark Leiter Jr. There are a couple guys who, to me, it's like there's not a chance in hell that they would go anywhere. Like, you're not going to see Swanson going anywhere. You're not going to see Justin
Mhm.
Steele or Alzolay or anybody like that. And also, can we just get a moment of appreciation for Adbert Alzolay? I
Oh
mean,
yeah.
holy shit.
Woo. What a
That's one of the best
oh,
innings I've ever seen of reliever throw.
yes. That slider is just utter filth right now. And
Unbelievable.
it's interesting that ever since he's been handed the closer's role, to me, that he's decided to turn the emotions up well past 11
I love
every
it.
single outing. And it feels like that either, I don't know if he decided on that when he got the role, or if someone told him, hey, when you get this, use those emotions in
Yeah.
every possible way. But
Well, because
it's
you can't do that as a starter. It would be insane.
right, right. It certainly feels like he's kind of harnessed that and
Yeah.
is really turning it into just a hellacious stretch of pitching. And he's been consistent and reliable at this point. And
Yeah.
especially against lefties, like that does not bother him anymore, Jameson Tyone. So
That
it's
strike three pitch against Yasmani Grandal was one of the
yeah.
dirtiest pitches I've ever
Mhm.
seen.
Yep, yeah, pure and utter filth, and it's great. And it happens to a guy who's very easy to root for too. So
Incredibly, incredibly. Yeah.
fought that arm injury that cost him what, a year and a half, and
Hmm.
fought that mentality of I can't get lefties out. I think it's wonderful to see that he's arrived at this point, and every time he's in, I root like hell for him.
Absolutely, and a great Twitter follow and social media follow as well. And as the youth say, the vibes with Adbert are immaculate.
Yeah, and I like his and Justin Steele's friendship. Like just
Yeah.
like having them both hit at the same time, I think is really really fun to see. Like how much they're not only enjoying it for themselves, but also for each other.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Well, as we wrap up here, any parting thoughts other than fire Jed, sell the team?
Yeah, I mean that's a constant when you have me on at this point. Yeah, I mean, I watch out for this Cardinal series coming up a little bit. But I'm not going to say that it's a definite trap series, but in the home series they just played against the Cardinals, outside of the final game on Sunday, like the Cardinals brought the bats every
Hmm.
day. And that's not going away unless they trade Nolan Arenado before this series starts.
Yeah.
And I going like a second time around, especially when they're going to be seeing Smiley and Tyone a second time around again, like that's the one part about this week that really gives me a bit of pause and hesitation.
Hmm.
So just kind of keep your eye on that and don't assume that that's like an automatic 3 out of 4.
Right. No, absolutely not. And same goes for the second White Sox game tonight. And I think what really scares me, knowing that these next 5 games are on the road, is you just don't want. And I'm sorry to reference it because I know you were there. Like the Renteria game, like you can't have that. And for anybody who doesn't know what that is, like I believe the Cubs were up 9-5 going to the bottom of the ninth.
Was
Alphonse Seca was pitching, I think,
it was a 5-run lead, I think,
or maybe
I don't
9-4 or something like that, and lost 10-9.
It
The
was
point
definitely
being, like even last night, as Fulmer let the first 2 runners on in the bottom of the ninth, like I had that feeling of like no, they cannot lose this game.
right.
And I think it's entirely possible, I would say likely, that the Cubs don't win all of the next 5 games, but it does feel like the margin for error is razor thin right now. And anything that sends the Cubs down a spiral of like, the Mancini game, as we keep talking about, that second game in London, which, like, look, it's not on him. There's plenty of other issues, but it did kind of send them into this tailspin for about a week. If that happens, the Cubs will 1000% be selling in 6 days. And,
Yeah.
I guess that's just the reality of it.
And that's a problem too, is that when you bring in that back part of the bullpen, like even Fulmer, who has been pitching better, but is not great at this point by any means,
Yeah.
is certainly not a sure thing. But when he starts an inning where you're thinking just kind of get through this with the first 2 guys getting on, and you got to go get Adbert, you keep doing that over the course of a month, and you're absolutely going to burn out Alzolay and Leiter and Merriweather. So,
Right.
I mean, maybe bring in another reliever too, Jed, because your roster's thin. Sorry.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, Fulmer has been a lot better, but there is no scenario in which a leadoff walk when you're up by 4 runs in the bottom of the ninth is okay.
Unacceptable, completely.
Yeah. Well, Ken, as always, you're writing wonderful articles. Where can people find them? Is there anything that you're particularly excited about that you would like people to check out?
Yeah, you can keep finding them at outsports.com a couple times every week. At the beginning of this week, I just wrote about a 20-year-old queer mountain climber who climbed to the base camp of K2, the second tallest mountain in the world, and became the youngest known out queer person to do so. Really inspiring story.
Very cool.
Someone a real genuine sense of enthusiasm for what he does, and about raising awareness for important LGBTQ causes. His name is Aiden Hyman, really interesting person. So highly recommend checking that article out. I am on Instagram at Ken Thin Guy. I am on X at Ken
Ugh.
Schultz _ Yeah. Yeah, that's how you pronounce it, I think.
It's a Hebrew X.
As
But
opposed to a South African X, which is
that or it's just X.
X. Yes.
All right. Well, now that we've talked about South African X's, let's wrap this up. You can follow us at Away Games Pod. You can follow me at Adam Mamawala. And this is fun. I'll be tweeting about this, but I just found out I'm going to be headlining Zany's Old Town for one night only. One night
Hell
only,
yeah.
folks, on Tuesday, September 19th. So I hope to have a lot of our listeners out. We certainly appreciate it if you do. But in the meantime, listen. By the time you hear my voice again, a lot will have changed. We don't know in what direction, but who can say? But we'll be back. Kevin should be back next week, and we will be discussing the trade deadline. And hey, your guess is as good as mine. But have a healthy, safe week. Try not to lose your marbles, and go Cubbies.
Fire Jed.
Sell the team.